What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Wet Net Weekend Report podcast. And we got a cool one for you guys today. We have John Kaiser with Tenacity Outdoors. How you doing, John?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good, man. It's good to have you. John has a really, really cool backstory, and he's honestly one of the coolest people that I've talked to, just down to earth, always willing to share information and help somebody out. And I'm really excited to hear his hear what he's got to say here tonight. What do you think, Adam?
We even have a special guest here. His name is Cash.
Yeah.
And he's a black lab. And
He's a big old boy.
yeah, he's a big old boy.
He's the Tenacity Outdoors mascot.
Yeah.
So, John, why don't you go ahead and first things first, just give us a little bit of your kind of like your background to fishing. Like, where did fishing come into your life?
Honestly, with my dad, we used to hogline fish like nobody's business from probably late August all the way till about mid-October out of the Camas Washougal Marina. And I remember when I was little, I used to get mad because my dad would go without me because he thought I was too little. So when I was 6 or 7, he finally took me, and we limited the boat for my dad and myself on Chinook and steelhead.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my exposure to salmon fishing.
Yeah.
It just stuck.
That's awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your eye there. What do you got going on with your eye?
Well, when I graduated high school from Washougal, I think I had about 3 weeks after graduation, and then I left for basic training for the Army. That was in 97. Did 10 and a half years on active duty. I spent 3 years at Fort Bragg in the 82nd Airborne Division, jumping out of planes. Did one peacekeeping mission to the Middle East before the war started. Then heard about the Stryker Brigade standing up at Fort Lewis and knew, hey, the Army has this new toy, dumped all their money into it. Those guys are going to go somewhere, so I want to go there. So I re-enlisted to come home, got stationed at Fort Lewis. That's how you know I'm old. I call it Fort Lewis, not JBLM. And
That's what I know it as.
sorry. And then I think it was October of 03, deployed the first time. Spent a year in Iraq, pretty much in Mosul, but they bounced us around all over the country. Made it through that deployment without any injuries. Then the second deployment, I was a squad leader. We were in Baghdad, and we were doing what they call fixed site security. So the vehicles are stationed in a strategic manner. People are doing work kind of inside the circle of the vehicles. The vehicles are there to protect them. And then a 120 millimeter mortar round landed in front of us. And I learned that day that you could actually see a mortar round land in front of you.
Oh, man.
Oh, shit.
I can't imagine. But, yeah, that's...
2 eyes are overrated.
Yeah, no kidding.
Plus, if you get drunk enough, you start squinting out of one anyways.
Hey, it's an advantage in the toilet bowl. Anybody that knows me never wants to be on my starboard side.
Right.
They're like, oh, he ain't going to see me. I'm not going over there.
Yeah, that's funny. So tell us a little bit about and you can cut me off if we get a little too deep into this. What was kind of like that recovery like kind of like rehab?
It was 2.5 years of reconstructive surgeries.
Yeah.
I think after 10 surgeries and more than 10 surgeries and over 100 hours in total, I just quit counting.
Yeah,
Damn.
that's crazy, man. So
Was it just your eye?
No, it was, they removed what was left of my eye in Baghdad at the surgical hospital. Shattered cheekbone, broken mandible joint in the jaw, a horizontal portion of my jaw on the lower left side was taken away from shrapnel, like 3 teeth with it, and then a gunshot wound to the shoulder.
oh, man.
Damn.
That's crazy.
They did a pretty good job reconstructing you because you're not any uglier than Clayton is. And
I've always been ugly. I just have an excuse now.
I have no excuse. I'm just ugly. Oh, man. So kind of the first time I had heard about you a handful of years ago was with the Veteran Outdoors deal that you were doing. Tell us a little bit about the Veteran Outdoors, how you got introduced to that, or did you start? I don't know anything about that, really.
No, actually, that's a Texas-based nonprofit, and it's still a thing. It's just the guys that started it kind of brought it down to a smaller level of when they started it. So when myself and Rob McCready were outreach coordinators for Veteran Outdoors, we would take anybody that served honorably, period. When Veteran Outdoors first started, they were taking people on once-in-a-lifetime hunts or fishing trips that were banged up pretty much as bad as I was or worse overseas.
Yeah.
And so they've kind of gotten back to that, and the two guys that started it both have businesses, and they're keeping it small back to what it was intended when they started it, and they don't have to fundraise. They're just using the profits from their business to drive what they're doing now.
Right. How did you get into that? Like, kind of what was your introduction to those guys? And
Their director of operations, Toby Nunn, was my squad leader the first time I got shot at in Iraq.
oh, really? Okay.
And I got a hold of him, and I was like, hey, I don't want to do this for somebody else. I want to start my own nonprofit. And he's like, do you want to run a business? I was like, no, I just want to take vets fishing. And he's like, how about you become our Northwest Outreach Coordinator? Because we don't have salmon in Texas.
There you go.
Perfect. So would
He's
you
like,
get
"Your
guys from
marriage-
like
your marriage will be happy.
would you get guys from like all over the country, or is it just kind of centralized to
Sometimes.
guys that are over
Like,
here?
We had a young lady that lives in Tennessee. Now she runs her own veterans nonprofit, but Veteran Outdoors flew her out here to go do the lipstick derby
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
in Astoria. And then we brought a young lady that was actually a Washougal graduate, Army veteran. We brought her out from Salt Lake.
Yeah. I remember. I think I was maybe fresh out of high school, a year or two, and right about the time I really started fishing, I started seeing you around, and then I started seeing you on Facebook, and I just kind of admired what you were doing pretty much right away. My dad's in the National Guard. I think he's 20. Oh man, I can't remember how long he's been in. I think he was active duty Army to start, and then he's full-time Guard now. Works at Camp Withacombe full-time, and so just kind of having that military, that military dad, and then seeing somebody, take veterans and do what you do. It was just super cool to see something like that.
It's always great getting these guys out on the boat. I mean, whether they fish, whether they don't fish, whether they've never fished, if nothing, it's not going to fix their problem. But one, it's going to give them a network, even if it's just the guys that they are on the boat with that day.
Yeah.
And they'll keep in touch. Like,
Yeah.
I see people that I have never met each other, put 4 of them on the boat together, and then anytime one of them posts something, you can see the other ones interacting with them. So at least their circle has gotten more than their couch.
Yeah. So after your incident, and you came home, was there any kind of like hesitation as to like, man, am I going to be able to fish, or you're just like, fuck it, I'm going fishing?
It was interesting learning how to tie knots with no depth perception.
And what about running a boat? Was that kind of funky to?
Well, I'd never run a boat on my own before.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I was kind of getting rid of a learning curve there. Well, I mean, I guess you kind of get a learning curve,
The
but
only thing I regret is I got a boat and started taking veterans fishing, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I started. So it
That's
got
the way to
kinda
do it, though.
frustrating. But the beauty is, now that I'm a licensed guide running a business, is I had 10 years in fishing as much, if not more, than some guides. Going out and learning the hard way.
Right.
And then once the word got out with some of the established guides in the industry, like Eric Lindy, Mike Salzar before he passed away.
yeah, rest in peace.
These are both guys that like would go out of their way to be like, hey, let me help you out.
Yeah,
You're
that's
doing
awesome.
this, and you should do this instead, and this is why.
Yeah. It's really cool when you get people like that that'll kind of take you under their wing, and especially when you're doing it for a cause like you do. It's super cool. So tell us a little bit about kind of like what you went from doing the veteran outdoors to kind of making the decision to go guiding full time and making a profit off of it. Was that kind of a tough decision to make? Like, what was like the drawing factor aside from just having to make money?
So the move from Veteran Outdoors was actually a move to a Washington nonprofit, Salmon for Soldiers.
Oh, okay.
That was because my old squad leader, former director of operations for Veteran Outdoors, bought Red Rum Sport Fishing in Cabo. And he's like, hey, you can stay on board with these guys. Maybe you want to go your own route. And no, well, that would be the mascot.
Yeah, the mascot's telling his side of the story now too.
Yeah. Leave it.
That's not how the story went, Dad.
And when I started talking to Salmon for Soldiers, I had already kind of helped behind the scenes on a trip or two. Like went and deckhanded for the Roach Harbor Salmon Derby before they shut that down. And it was just kind of hey, I'm with a different nonprofit. You don't need to tag me. Like, I'm just here to help.
Yeah.
And then there was another one where Bill Monroe Jr. did a trip for a retired Army veteran that was terminal with ALS.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bill took him down. Salmon for Soldiers hired him to take him and his wife down to Tillamook. And I had fished with Bill just days before this, paid to go fish with Bill. And he was telling me about it. He's like, have you ever heard of Salmon for Soldiers? And I was like, actually, I have. I'm kind of talking to him about maybe making a switch.
Yeah.
I was like, get a hold of them and find out if they care if I come out and give you a hand. I was like, I don't care if I touch a fish all day long.
Right.
I want in on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it was really cool to be on the boat and be a part of that and watch this guy catch a Chinook. And then Bill somehow got the Department of Oregon Fish and Wildlife to bless off, like within a matter of days, got the governor to sign off for this guy to be able to catch and kill out of season a wild coho also.
Oh, really?
Wow.
That's
And
cool.
we all know what it takes to get them to sign off on anything. So I'm like, well done, sir.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's impressive.
That's awesome.
But so when I did make the move officially to Salmon for Soldiers, to cover themselves, they're like, hey, you got to go get a guide license.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not thinking business. I'm like, okay, I'll go get a guide license. Well, I go get a guide license, and then I'm like, well, now all of a sudden I have to get insurance. And it's like, I have to make some money or this is stupid.
Yeah.
So it's trying to have the balance of, I still want to get veterans out, but I am a business first now.
Yeah.
So I always have a really good discount for veterans and first responders.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will get a hold of me and be like, hey, how much to sponsor a seat for a vet? Or I just have actual sponsors that will give me money that I run through the business since it's not a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to report it as income, but they're essentially paying me to take veterans out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I got a question about getting your guide license. Did they give you any guff with the eye, or is it just like you
No,
got an
I was
exemption because of the
super
military?
paranoid. Like I asked when I went to do the health certificate part of it,
Yeah.
like the medical screen. I'm like, is this going to be an issue? And they're like, no, you're good.
Huh.
As long as you, I thought I might get a night restriction. Some guides out there that are colorblind have a night restriction. You're not
Yeah,
allowed to
that's the
run
reason why I
during the
asked
dark.
is because a buddy of mine who guides had to get some sort of special exemption because he's colorblind.
Yep.
So
But no, I'm good. I passed the depth perception test for like what you have to do with the little box at the DMV, and then colors. So there's no restrictions.
sweet.
Yeah.
I just spend a lot more time looking around than other people. I have to.
So how long did you do the veteran outdoors before you went to Salmon for Soldiers? How long was that?
I think about 8 years.
Okay.
Oh, damn.
Gotcha.
Started out just bank fishing, chasing toolies on the Washougal.
Yeah. Adam loves chasing them.
Bunch of
What,
those.
chasing toolies?
Yeah.
I'll catch toolies all day.
Business.
I believe it was 7 or 8 years, and that's because my former squad leader from my first deployment to Iraq, Toby Nunn, he bought Red Rum Sport Fishing in Cabo, and that was when I made the move to a more local nonprofit here in Washington, Salmon for Soldiers, and then I think I was with Salmon for Soldiers for about a year and a half.
Gotcha. Was that kind of a weird adjustment going from having veterans, all the time to kind of taking more, civilian style people? Was it kind of a weird adjustment from, just kind of almost from like a communication standpoint? Like, 'cause I feel like a lot of times you can talk to veterans a little bit different than you can talk to a office worker.
Oh, totally. And the hardest part of the adjustment was with veterans on a free trip, there wasn't the same amount of pressure as a paying client on a fishing trip.
Right.
I mean, we all know there's days where no matter what you throw at them, it doesn't happen.
Oh, I've been there.
Like you're on the phone calling buddies like, hey, what I'm doing ain't working. What are you doing? Is it working? And with veterans, it was never about the fish. It was getting them out, letting them meet some new people that are also veterans that might relate to their situation, nature. And if we caught fish, it was a bonus.
Right.
Now all of a sudden paying clients, it's like, man, we got to
Yeah,
catch
the pressure's
fish.
on.
we got to catch fish, and I got to entertain, like make these people happy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can be a guide and catch all the fish in the world. If you're a douchebag, your clients are not going to call back.
Yeah.
That was like my first guiding experience. That guide was a total douchebag.
Yeah.
He was yelling at me. Okay, so we were buoy 10 fishing, and he didn't tell me what to do. I had never fished for, like, I've trolled for fish in the Columbia before, and he's telling me, didn't tell me what to do when I got a fish. Finally get a fish, and I pick the rod up, and there's nothing on there. And he's like, you fucked it off. And I'm like, I didn't know. I saw the thing biting, and I picked up the rod. He's like, oh, no, what the fuck? He's like, all right, next one, I'll tell you when to grab the rod. So I grab the rod. Fish, he tells me, like, we get the fish. Fish is on. I reel it up to the boat. This thing swam right up to the boat, and was, like, just laying there ready. And he hadn't even got the net out yet.
Oh, no.
And then I'm like, the fish is up here. The fish is here. Fish is here. And he's like, hold on. He's still getting the net out, and he's fucking with it, and like clipping it in and all that kind of stuff. And then by the time he had the net over to me, the fish popped off, and he's like, God damn it, you were high sticking it. And I'm like, dude, you're a fucking guide. Talk me through this. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I think that's where 10 years of taking veterans fishing kind of helped me as a professional guide. Is when I first started taking vets fishing, like I said, I didn't even know what I was doing. So like trying to learn what I'm doing and coach veterans, like I'm starting to pick up on the lingo, and I'm like telling them what to do, and they're just looking at me like deer in the headlights, shaking their head up and down, and I'm like, they have no clue what I'm saying. And so I learned to break it down Barney style.
Yeah.
Like talking to a 5-year-old, like
Right.
not demeaning them, but trying to just spell things out as like to where anybody can understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a guide, that's huge, because other words, you get so comfortable in what you're doing, you know the lingo, and you tell somebody to do something, and they're just going to look at you and shake their head yes, but they have no clue what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at the client and you go, drop the bow rod to 45, and if it taps bottom, come up 2 cranks, and they're like, and then
And as a newer guide in the industry, most of the clients I'm taking are people that have never fished before. Like they're in town, they realize it's fishing season. Who's the guide that has seats?
Right.
Well, the guy that's only been around for a couple years.
right.
Yeah.
Have you heard anybody with language barrier?
Haven't really had an issue yet. I'm sure you just jinxed me, and that's going to become a thing this year. I'm going to be asking Siri to translate.
Yeah.
Because I was out with Brandon once, and he had a bunch of, I think he had 4 clients, and a couple of them spoke English pretty well, and the other 2 of them didn't speak a lick of English, and they're all speaking Spanish to each other, and it was like trying to show them what to do, because I was like helping them deckhand, and it was just trying to show them what to do rather than being like, hey, like, point your rod tip in the water, all that kind of stuff. So it was made for a more challenging and more interesting day.
Yeah.
I don't know what would be worse, trying to struggle through that, or realizing just how miserably I retained 2 years of Spanish in high school.
Same here.
Yeah. I did sign language in high school, and I don't remember shit. I remember one.
You're number one.
That's right. That's right. This is absolutely not my story to tell, but have you heard Bill Monroe Jr.'s story about when he took the Russian guys fishing?
No.
What was it? I think it was a salmon trout steelheader
yeah.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
Tony Amato or whatever his last name. Bill was telling him the story. I guess he had a boat full of Russians, and they didn't speak like hardly any English. And this Russian gentleman was up in the bow fighting the fish, and the fish goes to run under the boat, and Bill's telling him, drop the rod, drop the rod, drop the rod. I guess the Russian dude looked at him, just dropped the rod.
Physically dropped the rod.
I couldn't believe that. Absolutely not my story to tell, but we were talking language barriers. I had to bring it up. I don't even know what I would do. You just kind of look at him like,
Well, luckily I own a rod company, huh?
yeah, no kidding.
I think my worst fiasco last season was we were up there at the mouth of the Klickitat, probably late October, maybe into November. But I had went from the Miller Marine rod stations that came with the boat when I bought it to the fishing rod stations. And they were great, but I didn't stop to think about how many threads do I have. I just added more material, just threw them back in there. Everything was good. Fished the whole buoy 10 season, no problem. The Gorge, Hood River, Now we're at the mouth of the Klickitat, and we got over on that shelf, and we're dragging 360. So I just try to throttle out of it instead of trying to reel up 6 rods.
Right.
And one of the bow rods, all 4 bolts just popped at once.
Yeah.
And the holder's on the way in. Thank God my client had the sense to grab the extension.
Yeah.
So I didn't lose the rod station or the extension or the Fulby. But right when he grabbed it off of the gunwale, the Fulby opened.
Oh, no.
Rod, reel, whole setup, everything. I'm just like, crap.
Yeah. I had
She's
issues.
Like, and the client's like, I can't believe you're not mad. And I'm like, does your experience get any better by me freaking out over like getting mad? Ain't gonna hand me a rod back.
Yeah, absolutely not. And now you got something to laugh about and tell a story on a podcast. So, no,
So if you do add hardware to your boat, make sure you got enough threads on those bolts.
Yeah, no kidding. I had a hard time with because I've got a fish right also, and but I didn't. My boat didn't come with the Miller Marine sliding system. It came
You
with
gotta drill right into the side.
yeah. Well, no, it was so Fish-Rite has their own sliding reel system, and it's kind of on like the same. It almost looks like a fish fighter puck, but the only thing it's almost like a polymer kind of material.
Yeah.
And it's got like a lip on top and a really small lip on bottom that clamps onto the rail, and the only thing holding it on is 2 set screws. And they're dinky little set screws. And probably for the first 6 months of me owning that boat, when I'm trolling 360s with heavy leads or whatever, I think 2 or 3 times I had those rail mounts just buckle. And I never lost a rod, but I came fucking close.
Oh.
And so I ended up just last fall, I made the switch to the Miller Marine sliding system, and I'm happy as shit with it. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah, there's no sliding going on in my boat. Everything's hard mounted.
That's
Drywall
what
screws, baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's funny though. Some of the guys that have nicer, newer boats that have huge price tags, they'll see a boat like yours and they'll scoff at it. And I grew up fishing in a wooden freaking boat that was made into Lakes, Oregon in the 50s.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fiberglass bottom, uglier than shit. Had a Johnson 30 horse on it that was also from the 50s.
Yeah.
And we would go out to the hog line at 50 and just murder fish. And my dad ran that damn boat for 30 years before he bought himself a freaking like 16 and a half foot Sportsman Hughes craft for his retirement present from
He
the
was
Clark
really
County
splurging
Road
on that
Department.
one.
Oh yeah.
And my first boat that I ever had was a 14-foot smoker craft with an 8-horse Honda, and we would launch there at Scappoose Bay, and we would run out to the Columbia, and this is back when everybody was hog lining their fishing wobblers and stuff at the mouth of the Lewis. And like, believe it or not, there were a handful of times when, we had guides that were asking us what we're doing, and we're, 16 years old. Like, I don't have a fucking clue, dude. Like, we're just a couple of nutsacks in a 14-foot smoker craft, and like, we're catching fish.
I think it's the biggest misconception on the water that if you have big expensive stuff, you're going to murder fish.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the most old beater boats, cheap gear, just murdering fish, and it makes my heart happy.
Yeah.
There's also a misconception that if you have a big, nice, shiny boat, you know how to drive it too.
Yeah.
'Cause, dude, there's one
It's
time.
okay, they have a boater safety card.
Right, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. There was one time I was coming back out of Tillamook Bay and that Tillamook Marina there, and this dude came in, one of those like 32-foot kingfishers, and I don't know why he was coming in so hot. And this dude just comes in at an angle and smashes the fuck out of the dock. And I'm on the other side of the dock, and it hits the dock so hard that it pushes my boat, and I'm like, bam, bam, and I'm bouncing off the dock. And I don't use bumpers. My boat's a piece of shit. It's got more dimples than my ass cheeks. But the guy comes out and he's like, "I'm so sorry, man." I'm like, "Don't be sorry to me. Look at my boat. Like, look at the dent you just put in your boat, bro."
Yeah, no
I think
kidding.
the most frustrating thing for me is after going to Flagship Maritime to get my Coast Guard credential, and then you actually like get very in depth into the rules of the road on the water, like stuff that you kind of knew before, but maybe not so intricately. And then I'll be running up out of Camas, going around the corner at 50, and I'm hand railing that marker going up river. And then here comes this jack wagon in a wake surf boat, whatever the hell they're called. And he's determined to slide in between me and that channel marker. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And then he's
Right.
like yelling at me and flipping me the bird. And I'm like, do you drive on the wrong side of the road too?
Yeah, probably. So we're coming up on spring Chinook here. It's still a little bit early, but I've seen a handful of guys that are out giving them a shot already. You are one of the only guys that I know of, if not maybe the only guy that I know of, that is consistently running super baits in, for spring Chinook. Don't
forget about me. Okay, maybe not consistently, but I do it quite often.
Yeah. But tell me a little bit about kind of your philosophy as to why you do it, and kind of what you have like success wise. Like, is it comparable to a cut plug herring? Is it just kind of change it up? What are you thinking?
It's easier to get it to roll. Like, you don't have to worry about did I mess up my cut.
Yeah.
But me running super baits for springers was 100% a 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Nobody could find herring.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I had all of these mini cut plug super baits that I only ran in the fall. And even in the fall, I wasn't really running at that time. I didn't know any better. I wasn't really running mini cut plugs. I was running skinnies.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, we find ourselves in there's no herring. I'm like, man, I got all these things. They look like cut plug herring. I'm gonna run them. So I started out that first year, and I only ran the blackjack
because it looks most
it
like
looks
a herring.
Natural.
Yeah.
And I ran anything that was blue or chartreuse, like the blue Hawaiian, stuff that looked natural. And once I started hammering them, somehow or another, I end up talking to Scott Call finally, and he's like, don't just stick to the freaking original ones. He's like, the most loudest, obnoxious stuff you have.
Yeah, it's not like
will
springers
work.
in the spring are like, oh no, I'll only eat real bait. But in the fall, they're like, yeah, I'll have the most ugly fucking clown shoes looking motherfucker,
But I cheat, and I kind of run the Jack Glass mentality.
Yeah.
I'm going to quote Jack Glass. Nobody can act like I'm trying to claim his quote. But have you ever heard Jack's response to why we run 3 hooks in the Columbia?
No, I haven't.
Because 4 is illegal. And it really gets the saltwater guys. Like, it'll twist their panties.
Yeah.
They get pissed.
Because they run a single big one usually.
Yep.
Yeah, or I guess they're required to, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
They forget that Columbia River rules are not ocean rules.
Right.
So if I'm running a mini for springers, I do 4 or 5 millimeter beads. In the middle of those 4 beads, I do a silver wedding ring. I do a gold star. They call it a micro shrimp, but it's just a tiny little hoochie. And then I do 3 hooks.
Yeah.
And typically, I'm going to start out with a double arm length, a 25-foot mono.
25-foot mono. Wow.
Or 25 pound. Hey,
That's a long leader.
I got
How do you
brain
net that
damage.
fucker?
Don't make fun of me. You'll burn in hell. Double arm
I'm
length.
already there.
Double arm length, the 25-pound mono. Maxima is usually my go-to. And I'm 6'2", if that gives you an idea, my double arm length. And by the time I'm done tying everything, it probably ends up being about 5 foot, 5.5.
Right. Do you mess with that at all, depending on water clarity, or like turbidity or anything?
If
like
I lose sight of my propeller, I'll probably cut it down to 3.5, 4 feet.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to run. I'm fortunate, and I have a tote full of the smaller triangle inline flashers that Short Bus made years ago. I don't think they're available anymore. But I'll take one of those smaller triangles and I'll run it in tandem with the regular size triangle. And the only triangles or 360s I run now, 90% of the time, are the Short Bust dipped mirror flashers.
Okay.
Whether it's chrome, chartreuse, or pink.
Yeah. So when you're running double flashers, I've never done it. So would you kind of run like the smaller one up top and then hook it directly to, or do you do any kind of leader in between?
You could do a bumper in between, but to me that's just more stuff to get tangled.
Yeah, or another break point.
They already come with the ball bearing swivel. So what I'll do is I'll take one of the extras that came with the flashers and just take the duo snap,
right,
and then put it on the top. So I'm just running them literally directly to each other with just a ball bearing swivel in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. Does that drag a lot more? Into like, do you get a lot more drag fishing it like
I'm
that?
sure you do, but with it being an inline, it's not like there's a lot of drag with going that
Yeah.
slow anyway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was kind of my only thought was, with having that extra flasher, because I know with springers you really want to be hugging the bottom.
When we went out with, I believe his name's Brent Knight, the writer for Salmon Trout Steelheader, writes a lot of their articles. He went out on the boat with me in late spring last year, and everybody was either way down on the Columbia or they weren't fishing at all because it was just crappy. Like it was blown.
Yeah.
And sea lions everywhere. We had all those smelt in the damn river, and we went far enough down that by running those double flashers, we were actually able to get on. Let's see, we released 2 wilds that day. We killed one, and we had another one at Prescott, trolling on the Columbia that we lost.
Right. Yeah.
The writer of all people that fishes all the time picked up a rod as soon as it twitched, and it was game over. He's like, I shouldn't have picked that up yet. And I was like, nope.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a quick story on using these super baits for springers. There was one day where I was out there and I could not get my fucking bait to roll, and I ended up just blowing through like half a tray of herring, and it was like pretty early in the morning, and I'm by myself, and I'm just like getting frustrated. I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. So I take a strip of herring and I mash it up a little bit, put it inside a super bait, and I realize, oh crap, my leader's only like 30 inches on this thing. So I end up taking a rigging wire, like a bumper, and putting that in between the leader of the super bait and the flasher, just to get me a little bit further away from the flasher there, and not even like 200 yards into my troll, right there in front of the mouth of the Willamette Channel, fish on. I'm like, and it was a 1 fish limit too, and I get the fish in the boat, and I'm like, sweet, fuck yeah, finally. And I think that was my first springer of the year too. And I was thinking about going to the Willamette Channel. I'm just like, you know what? I'm not gonna press my luck. Got my fish. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
It was like glorious. So these things definitely do work in the spring.
Yeah, yeah. So with your when you're running the super baits in the spring, do you do anything different for what you're stuffing them with compared to the fall, or are you still just running straight tuna and stuff?
Yeah, I have a very different mix. Typically, I'll do like a Procure addicted salmon blend. If it's muddy water, I will garlic it to the point where I retch on it.
Oh yeah.
And because if you get to where you can't see your prop, you're relying on smell more than anything that you put in the water.
So you throw some salmon slammer in there.
If you can
Salmon
burn
slammer.
their sinuses and piss them off, that's how you're going to catch fish.
Maybe
the guys
piss off
that
the
run
boat next to you,
plugs on
too.
anchor, you can smell the garlic.
Oh,
like
yeah.
half-mile downriver from them, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Same idea. Just piss them off and get them to find it and try to kill it.
Yeah. Do you ever do any mashing of herring or anything like that, or do you just kinda
No,
stick
I
to-
will run half herring and half super baits. And I mean, I've had days where one hits more often, and you're like, screw it, I'm gonna switch everything.
Yeah.
Or it's kind of an equal spread. And the big bitch, if you run both, is you got to remember what rods have what, because when it's a super bait running 3 hooks, if they grab it, they're pretty much screwed.
Right.
Game on. But if you're running a herring and you forget it's a herring rod, and the second it goes down, you pick it up, you're like, oh shit, that's a herring rod. I just screwed that one up.
Yeah, yeah. So play it safe and just let them eat it either way.
But the other thing I'll do is if I'm running a super bait, I'm going to put 40-pound line on it, so I can lay the wood to it if I want.
Right. Right.
It's going to roll either way.
Right.
If I'm running a herring, then it's got to be 25-pound, and I'm using light owner herring hooks.
Yeah.
Which you don't try to force a fish to do anything with an owner herring hook. You just bend it out and wave goodbye.
Yeah, yeah. What do you do for your herring hooks? Do you do like a 3/0 and a 4/0, or do you do 3/0s?
It depends on what bait I'm running. If I'm running smaller baits, I'll do a 1 and a 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If I'm running green label, I'll do a 2 and a 3.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
My drag hook is usually my smallest hook because I doubt that's the one that's actually gonna hook the fish.
Right.
It's an insurance policy, and sometimes I'll do an extended gap.
Okay.
Like
yeah.
if I'm running a herring, like cut plug herring, I want my trail hook to be well beyond the tail I want the eye of that hook
Okay.
below the tail.
Right. Yeah, myself personally, I I like the light line. I like 20 to 25 pound line, but I like a bigger hook for my first hook, not the trailer. I'll run a 3/0 trailer, but I like a 5/0 for my big hook because I feel like when I'm trying to get my spin, I feel like I can get better control of like where I'm hooking it. You know, like I personally find it easier to get my herring to spin with a bigger leader hook.
Well, and I cheat. I use a cutter.
I use a cutter
Everybody
too.
laughs at me. They're like, "Oh my god, a guy that uses a cutter."
Why wouldn't
I'm
you use a cutter?
Yeah, I love the consistency. The consistency of a cutter. You know, you use a cutter, it's going to be the same thing every fucking time.
I like that I don't have to think instead because I've cut them plenty freehand where you're like, okay, 45, okay, there, or whatever the degrees are.
Yeah.
Every time you just don't even have to think. You make sure it's just up against one of those sides of the guard. One thing to keep in mind though, when we're talking about hook size, owner versus Gami versus whatever are going to be a little bit different.
You say you got to piss? Okay. We
Yeah, so as far as hooks goes, I've noticed that from one brand to another, be it 3/0, say they're all 3/0s, one could be quite a bit larger or quite a bit wider of a gap. So it's kind of weird when people talk about like, oh, I only run 2-Hawks, but 2/0s. 2/0 what? Because a 2/0 owner versus a 2/0 Gami look a lot different, or in an octopus versus a wide gap or a needle point or anything. There's a lot of difference.
Yeah.
I mean, shank length, width, point length. There's a lot of there's differences.
The other consideration is what hooks can you actually find on the shelf?
Right.
I spent most of last season saying, well, that's not really what I want, but at least they have it.
I did that yesterday when I was buying bead hooks or steelhead.
Yeah, that's where I'm lucky. I'm lucky living like 5 minutes from Bob's. Bob's usually does a really good job at staying stocked up. So, you ever need hooks? Let me know. I can hook you up.
Bob's is my favorite.
Yeah.
Fisherman's. I like Fisherman's too, and well, let's face it, Fisherman's is closer depending upon the time of day.
Right.
I bet you each $1 you can't say anything nice about Sportsman's.
That's a great place.
Sportsman's has good hunting
I
stuff.
have to be nice. I'm doing a seminar at Sportsman's tomorrow.
Sorry. My bad. They're great and they have
I
good
wish
hours.
It would go back to what it was before they were talking about a merger.
Yeah. I will say, and this is totally not related to fishing at all. Sportsman's has a better duck hunting selection, in my opinion. So when I'm looking for like duck hunting stuff, in terms of like, they usually have a really good shell selection. Just like accessories, hand warmers, stuff like that. Bob's is a little bit less. So it's one good thing about Sportsman's.
You have a Sportsman's up in your neck of the woods too.
Yeah. Not as close as Bob's.
Yeah,
but
I have a Bi-Mart. Bimart's like my place that's close to me. I know you grown, but there's Sportsman's and Bi-Mart in Vancouver.
No, it's a good grown.
Okay.
Most people don't know about Bi-Mart unless they're old.
Well, luckily we only have like 15 listeners, so you're okay.
Like I'm halfway between young and old, and I'm retired, so I got to go check numbers on Tuesday.
Right.
I'm seeing what they have.
Oh man,
that's what old people do.
Yeah,
they go check their numbers on Tuesday.
Yeah. Go buy some hooks and some Fran's bread.
Yep. Yeah. Fran's bread. Oh man. So tell us a little bit about man, I don't know.
Today, Junior.
I don't know, Adam.
How about what you have going on next?
Yeah.
I guess Springers,
right? Yeah,
well,
obviously.
Starting the channel.
I don't do kokanee like a lot of guides though. I'm not going to lie. I don't really enjoy kokanee fishing.
I used to a lot.
If I get somebody that says, hey, I want to bring my kid out, I want to get them excited about fishing, I'm like, man, kokanee is the place for you. I only charge $150 a seat for an adult, and one paying adult, I'll let them bring one kid.
Yeah.
And I'll charge them $50 for the kid because I don't want to lose money doing it, but I want to get kids excited about fishing.
Yeah. Now, it's a little bit of a drive for you, isn't it, from Washougal to Merwin or whatever?
It's not that bad. I think it's
only
35,
further
40
miles.
minutes.
Oh, is it?
Total.
Yeah. I just went kokanee fishing for the first time handful of months ago, and I've been waiting for a chance to do it again, but it seems like every weekend we get, the wind up there is fucked, and I've still got the top on the boat, so it
seems like it's starting to get better now. I was trying to do a trip today.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I've been talking about going kokanee fishing for like a year, and every time when it's like comes up to it, I'm like, I'd rather catch something bigger. Because when I first started fishing, that's all I did every week for 2 years. And I finally got a bigger boat that can handle bigger water. And I'm like, well, kokanee fishing? Why would I do that?
Yeah.
I can go catch sturgeon and salmon and steelhead.
Yeah.
It's like walleye. It's great when there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And
Walleye tastes great.
people. I know some people are like they're all about walleye. It's just not my thing. If I want to go walleye fishing, I'm going with one of my buddies that's a guide.
Yeah, it's hard for me to justify because walleye, granted there is a winter fishery, but it's hard for me to justify driving past like 5 prime salmon fisheries to get to a walleye fishery. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
well, and we're not geographically located in a place that, I mean, if I wanted to go up there and guide for walleye, yeah, I could, but now I got to figure out where the hell am I going to stay? Because to make it worth it, I got to be there. I can't run back and forth every day. And is the weather in the gorge going to allow me to get up there without dying?
Yeah. The gas there and back would be pretty much one paying client.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, if you had to say one fishery, what's your favorite between Drano, Wind River, Bowie 10, all of them? If you had to pick one.
I couldn't. I'm a tie between Baker Lake sockeye and Drano.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Springers.
Yeah. I might have to try to get a Baker Lake trip with you this year because Adam went up to Brewster last year and I didn't get a chance to go, but I really want to try doing that upriver sockeye stuff. I've never done it. So.
Some days Baker is just as fast as Brewster, but most days you're going to have to work a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not such a rat race. Like the boat ramp's going to be trash.
Yeah.
Because there's only like 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to get out on them. And I can't speak for Brewster because I've never even fished it. But everybody at Baker Lake is very chill. Like it's very rare in all that nonsense and all those boats. It's really rare to come upon somebody that's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like that guy.
Right.
Brewster's
It's like fishing in Canada. Everybody's trying to apologize.
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, bud.
So Brewster is like Drano without direction.
Oh, yeah. So
So
like
it's
the
like-
Wind River, that toilet bowl they had there at the Wind River last year.
There was way more
Nobody
direction
can
at
figure
Wind
out which
River
way
than
to
there
go.
was at Drano.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, at Brewster. Because
Yeah.
Brewster, you can go either way. It's not like a bowl.
Right.
Or it's not like a circle. It's not like a racetrack. It's
Every
dude, you're
which
just
direction.
going any direction. Some people are going north. Some people are going south. Some people are going west. And you just, everything kind of works. It's like a street in India. It's just like there's shit going on everywhere.
Those are fisheries where I want to get a hold of one of my buddies like Vernie Cross and be like, "Hey, I want to pay to jump on your boat today. I'm not dragging my boat up there for that nonsense."
It really wasn't that bad because everybody understands that it's chaotic and it's just like Drano where we all here for the same thing. We all know what's going on. Don't be a dick and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And also get off your phone. Cause,
I've seen some big water days on people's videos from up there though.
oh yeah, when we were there, it was like a lake. So and it was 100 and something degrees, and so you get on the water early and you get off early, and then you go back out in the evening. But
Yeah.
if you don't get your limit really fast, but it was our first time up there, so it took us quite a while to get our limit.
Yeah.
Clayton, what's your favorite fishery of the year?
Drano.
Drano.
Yeah. Probably just, I don't know. I feel like there's a certain level of like, there's almost like a competitive nature. It's like everybody works together, but it's also like, okay, there's fucking 100 boats in the toilet bowl. Like, who's going to get it? You know?
And 10 of your buddies are there too.
Yeah.
So then you're on like, you're happy for them that they're catching fish.
Yeah.
But you hate that you're watching and they're catching fish.
Yeah.
Because that was me watching you last year.
It happens that way.
Or you get stuck behind the boat that doesn't understand that the reason all the guides are passing them is because like 1.5 is the minimum, 1.7 miles per hour is kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Or unless you're a dumbass like me and left my main motor on in gear trying to troll in the toilet bowl.
Going too fast.
Oh my God. It was, so I got off work on a Friday and packed up my lady and the kids in the truck and hauled ass out there. And it was, I mean, we had an hour and a half or so to fish and it was windy as a son of a bitch. But the toilet bowl was still pretty well loaded with boats. And so went from the launch to the toilet bowl and I thought I turned my main motor off, but obviously I didn't. Dropped my kicker and I'm trolling and I'm like fucking up these guys' asses, you know? And I'm thinking they're the fucking assholes. I'm like, come on. I wasn't yelling, but I'm like getting mad at myself. I'm like, what the fuck? Threw out both my windsocks and I'm still like in these guys' asses. And I think we made, maybe 5-6 passes, and I said, fuck this, dude. We're done.
And I already know from this story that you have a Yamaha because you couldn't hear it running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there'd be no mistaking if it was my boat.
Yeah, no, I couldn't hear the cocksucker running, and so pulled all the rods in and put them all away and everything, and I shut my kicker off, and I went to turn my main motor on, and I seen it was in gear, and then I looked over and I seen it was peeing. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me! Like that explains why. And at this point, she's like, oh well, do you want to go try again? I'm like, fuck no, dude, I'm already done.
I've done that at Buoy 10 where I go to start my main and grind the hell out of it. Look back, I'm like, oh damn, that thing's been on this whole time.
Yeah. Oh man.
I had a day like that. I mean, well, not the same thing, but I was running my kicker all morning, and then out of nowhere it just stops. I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll run my main. So I throw out my drift socks and I'm running my main from the helm, and I'm fishing. We're catching a couple fish, and then I'm like, what the hell happened to my kicker? And I'm figuring it out. Like I'm going through everything. What's going wrong? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? And finally somebody's like, did your kill switch fall off? And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, fuck.
You didn't figure that out until like a day or two after.
A day or two after. I posted on Aluminum Boats Northwest. Like,
That's
what the
first
hell?
thing I check if a motor won't start.
Yeah. Do you remember who it was that asked you?
Was it you?
It was me.
Oh, well, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, well, because like in previous years, I've always had the leash on there, but finally I found an extra clip in my glove box, and I was just like, oh shit, I'll just put that on there, and I'll have the leash, and then also not have to worry about the keys for my outboard locker being just right next to it, where they could easily steal my outboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I felt pretty stupid.
Yeah.
My number one recommended thing to having a kit somewhere on your boat is a spinner wire. For nothing other than when you look back and realize one of your motors stops peeing,
Yeah.
throw a spinner wire in there. It's going to be a damn pine needle
Yeah.
every time.
Well, my boat's stored inside, so maybe not.
You'll suck them up from the water.
We've definitely used that trying to get ice out of the little pee hole during sturgeon.
I just pee on it. We've done that at the boat ramp during duck season. You try to get the motor started and it won't go. You get 3 guys that'll just pee on the hose and it thaws it out real nice.
That's some redneck ingenuity right there.
Yeah.
Well, and that's talking about going too fast at Drano. I had to learn the hard way with my last boat when I had my 18-footer before I was a guide. Bags are great, but bags are for wind. They're not to slow you down.
Right.
You have to take, unless you know how to do it yourself, you have to go to a marine mechanic and have them tweak your idle.
Right.
Especially if it's a Yamaha 99. You've got to give it less fuel and more throttle.
Yeah. I have my mechanic.
Or more fuel and less throttle.
Yeah, I have my mechanic up in Castle Rock, and I just had the carb cleaned, and I asked him to fuck with it a little bit because it was just like you're saying. It was almost like I would go to throttle into it, and it would take so much to get it going, and it was 0 to 100. You know, it was like all or nothing.
Well, and just idle, you're like 1.9, 2.3 at the lowest.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell? Everybody else is going slower. How do I do this?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Like, I got out of there, took it to a buddy, and he's like, yeah, these things are designed to save the world, not troll slow.
Yeah. No, I troll nice and slow now. When I went and did that kokanee deal, I was trolling pretty consistently 1.1, 1.2 with no socks or anything. So I was really happy with it. Yeah.
My little Tahatsu patrols down pretty slow. Like in just I don't know what you'd call it, but all the way down. It does like 1.3, 1.4. And if I'm trying to get a little bit slower, I'll kick my main motor into gear just to like have that prop not spinning. So just a little
more
tiny bit of drag, and that seems to be like perfect for kokanee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The biggest thing that'll get you without socks on the bow at Drano is
Some fat bitches in the front.
Well, no, you're totally sheltered in the toilet bowl until you cut into the bridge. And if it's a big wind day, you like forget how sheltered you are, and then all of a sudden it blasts in from under the bridge, and it's like, watch out, buddy, here I come.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's cool as shit. You can kind of play that wind sometimes. Like you're kind of getting pushed out of the boundary, and you get a boat that gets ready to make his turn, and I'll just set it up just right to where I get into the corner, let off the throttle, and the wind just pushes me perfect. It's like. It's like NASCAR.
That boundary was its own subject of conversation last
It's not
year.
there anymore.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
No, like
Who's to say they're not going to put it back right before spring starts?
Yeah.
who's to say they're not going to jack with it again?
Hopefully
I
somebody
am
picks it up and drags it back out into the Columbia again.
I'm genuinely curious as to who did it because I want to.
I'd like to buy him a case of beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I went out there one day and it was there, and then I went out there next day and it was gone. I was
It
like,
was out in the river.
yeah.
That's literally where it
Yeah.
went.
Oh, yeah, you could see it from the bridge.
Yeah.
I was like, well, this is fucking awesome.
Wait,
But-
the boundary's all the way
The-
out there.
The one day it was in there, first fish we hook runs right for it. It's like,
no.
I'm like, hey, buddy, like do the thing you're not supposed to. Thumb the living shit out of that reel.
Yeah.
And get that thing to turn around or break. But I don't want to deal with a fish stuck on that damn buoy chain.
Yeah.
It ended up breaking everything. I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, that boundary marker fucked everything for a couple weeks there.
Yeah.
Well, it made it really hard to get that turn in. There was a way to do the turn and stay on your side of the boundary without the buoy there.
Right.
Once they put the buoy in, it was just like, yeah, forget about it. I'm just going to short it every time.
Yeah.
Well, dude, the sucky thing is like that is the hot spot. Like we can all agree. That's
Oh,
the hot
absolutely.
Spot. And they pretty much killed the hot spot, and also like so sometimes people just won't let you in. So you're 3 or 4 wide making that first
Or
turn.
they cross the boundary and come back in and then fuck up everything. Because
Yeah.
everybody's got to stop.
Yeah, exactly. You're either gonna hit the buoy or you're gonna go around the far side of it. Yeah, it just made for a big headache. I hope that's not in here next year.
If I was still a banky, and I started as a banky, so I always try to give those guys their room.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while you slip over that line because like somebody in front of you will hammer a fish, and that's your only choice. It's like, sorry guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I was a banky, I'd want to be out on the Columbia around the corner.
Right.
Because they can be. They're
Yeah.
allowed to. We're not.
Yeah.
As long as the wind's not howling, because otherwise it's gonna be tough to make a proper cast. But I got to give those bankies credit; they are fucking amazing at getting their plugs to land like right in between boats or right in between your 2 rods.
Yeah, I've had them. I'll run 6 rods in Drano, and I've had them. Bow rod. They're dropping them right fucking there.
Yeah, and you're
but
just like, plink.
I like the ones that will yell at a boat that crosses the line, like, "Hey, man!"
Yeah.
My bad.
yeah. Well, it's like
Because it happens, and I always try to like respect the fact that hey, that's all they have.
Yeah.
So
Get a boat, bitch.
my bad.
I'm sorry you're
Way more fun over here. Oh, that was loud.
But
I'm sorry you're broke.
what,
No, just
what I
kidding.
can't get behind is the guys that literally throw plugs into the bow of someone's boat,
Yeah.
especially when I think it was last year or the year before. Some idiot did that and ended up hooking like a 5-year-old that was
Oh,
sleeping in the
no.
bow of the boat.
Dude, I'd be fucking hot. If somebody hooked my daughter, I would. I'm not a confrontational person, but I'd have some fucking.
You better
words.
be able to make me think it was an accident.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'd be seeing how far my boat can go up that hill to run you down.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is like I try to have respect for the bankies because, like you said, it's all they got. But at a certain point, like they got to understand kind of what we're going through too. Like you'll have 100 fucking boats in the toilet bowl, you're gonna get fucked.
And the
It's
wind.
gonna happen. Yeah, you get the boats, the wind, and you're fishing fucking 6 rods in a fucking boat. Like,
Did you ever see the video of the day that there was like 30? They did an episode for Addicted
Yeah.
at Drano on Ryan McGowan's boat.
oh, okay, yeah.
And we were heading out of the toilet bowl and we were getting ready to make our turn to head back in. And I looked behind me and I was like, this is a great time to go out in the middle of the lake. Anybody that's got a pee, like all new baits, maybe swap up some lures or spinners or super baits. He's like, that's going to take a while. Why? And I was like, look behind you. And it was like 30 boats all tangled with each other. I was like, I want no part of that. I was like, I don't know how we missed it, but I'm happy.
Yeah. Oh man, that's killer. I had a really bad one at Drano in the fall last year, fishing right out in front of the toilet bowl there. I was running 6 rods out of my boat because you can fish a 2-rod endorsement, and we had myself, my daughter, my son, and my lady, and we were trolling in with everybody. And oh no, I lied. I wasn't doing 6 rods. I was doing 4 rods. Anyways, 4 rods for the 4 of us, and was headed back kind of towards the lake. I was trolling upriver, and I start seeing my rod kind of burying, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Because it didn't look normal. It didn't look like a normal takedown. And I kind of looked back, and I seen there was fucking 3 boats tangled together, and somehow, some way, I don't know if they had a fish or if I had a fish or what, but all 4 of my rods ended up tangled with 3 other boats. and it was just myself, my lady, and my 2 kids, and I'm trying to fucking hand a rod to my lady, try to deal with one rod, and run the
guy,
boat.
If it's a busy toilet bowl and I hook one on the bottom, I'm gonna yell at it. If it's busy, I'm just gonna break it off.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not even gonna try.
No, absolutely.
And I don't think anybody should. If it's not that busy, like instantly yell at the guy behind you. Hey, one way or the other, I'm stuck on the bottom and I want it back.
Yeah.
But when there's 100 boats in the toilet bowl, man, just break it
Clamp
off.
it down, break it off.
Yeah, you got to cut your losses sometimes.
I broke
Craig-
a rod there last year.
Craig Mitchell's deckhand dives down there every day and gets every single flasher out.
Oh,
He
really?
will sell them back to you for like $10 a pop.
Oh, really?
And at first, when he sent me a message, because of the way I tape mine, he knew they were mine. I'm like, wait a minute, you know they're mine and you're going to charge me money. But then I'm like, well, at least you're a kid that had some initiative. Like, I know how to make some money. I'm going to exert some effort.
Yeah.
I was like, because at first I was pretty shitty with the kid. And then I was like, okay.
Wait, does he go
I'll buy
like
my
right at
shit
dusk
back.
or something?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Every
for him.
day.
Yeah.
A lot smarter than I am. You know, he's out there making money.
Yeah, like at
You're
first I was
donating
pissed
15
on
bucks at a
principle,
time.
but then I was like, well, most of these kids today won't do shit to make money, so
Yeah.
good for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we had one last year. We had a hot fish. I mean, brand new reel, drags torqued down, and before we could even reel up the other rod, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like it went from pegging it to I'm screaming.
Yeah.
And we yell at the guy behind us, really, and he's a new guide, or might not be a new guide, but he's a guide I'd never seen at Drano before. We're like, hot fish coming right at you. He doesn't reel up. He doesn't do nothing.
Oh, no.
Wipes out every single rod on this guy's boat.
Oh, man. That's
And
messy.
so we're trying to get it back. Finally, the fish is just obviously gone.
Mm-hmm.
He's chewing me out, and I'm just like, dude, why didn't you reel up?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I told you it was coming. There's nothing I could do to stop it.
Right.
And so he like tries driving off, and I'm like, hey, we got to get the hell out of here and over to the side somewhere, or we're going to have a lot of people that are not happy with us.
Yeah.
Like etiquette, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a problem. Let's not make it everybody else's problem.
Yeah. Oh,
So
man.
we get over on the bank. He's got his kicker in gear, pushing him onto the bank still. He's got 6 rods in this equation. I have 1. And he just won't chill out. He just keeps going. And he's like, oh, like he's blaming me. He's like, oh, it's going to take me an hour to undo all of this stuff. And finally the light bulb goes on because I have clients. This guy's losing his shit in front of his own clients. He's like, you're right. You are going to spend an hour undoing that. And I cut my main line. I was like, I'm going to go catch fish because I still got rods in the game. And my buddy's looking at me because it's like his favorite flasher. And you know we're not getting it back. Right? So what I didn't realize when I cut it is that he had that kicker in gear still.
Oh, no.
So as we come around the next round and hook a fish right in front of him, he's hand lining, hand over hand, pulling his line out of his kicker. And I'm like, then I kind of felt bad. I was like, that is karma, buddy.
I wouldn't even feel bad. That's the perfect fuck you. You
And
know?
then the next day, the same thing happens, but in reverse.
Oh, man.
This old guy, like I've got a Marine Corps veteran. He paid me to go fishing with his daughter and his son. He's getting ready to have a brain tumor removed shortly after that trip. And I think we had everything except my 2 fish. And these old guys, they hook a fish. You could tell it's a big fish. It's a hot fish, and it blows right through me. And so, you know, every rod that's involved, like we pick it up, we're in fucking free spool, kind of thumbing it, not trying to put tension on it. And we're staying as close to this guy as we can. And he's like, why don't you get away from me? And I'm like, bro, your fish ran through every single one of my rods. I'm just trying to help you get your fish.
Right.
Like, cut every one of my lines. I don't care. Go get your fish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he's like, oh. Well, he doesn't cut it. I wish he would have. So now he's got a hand. He reels as far as he can until the ball of junk gets to the end of his rod. And I'm like, you should have just cut it.
Oh, man.
So he hand lines it. They get it.
Yeah.
It's a stud.
Oh,
especially for a springer. We're talking like 25, 28 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Just a tank. And he's like, man, thanks. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, hey, I'm just glad you got your fish, bud. He's like, what do I do with this? And I was like, just cut that shit. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, hey, we've already had a good day. They've already got their fish. I don't really give a shit about my fish. We're going to throw that rat's nest up in the bow box, and I'm going home. I'll deal with that shit when I get home.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I got a quick one about that. I was fishing with my buddy Zach in his boat, and we get a hot fish on, and there's this dude, like, it wasn't that busy of a day. It was like a Tuesday at Drano, a little bit earlier in the season, so it wasn't super crazy. And there's this guy fishing there, and we're like, hey, we got a fish coming down. He's right below you. And dude, he hears us. He looks at us, doesn't acknowledge us. We're like, we got a fish right below your boat. Reel up. And he's like, keeps going. So then finally, it hooks his starboard side and gets, we start taking his line in with it. And he's not really like cooperating with us, not like, spooling it, whatever. So then finally, my buddy Zach gets his gear up to our boat, and he just cuts his leader, and the guy's spinner goes in the water. He's like, "You just cut my leader." And we're like, "Yeah, we had a fish on. We fucking told you like 5 times," and he's pissed about a $3 spinner. Yeah. We're like, "Dude, get fucked, man! Like, we told you, we gave you ample warning, and you didn't fucking help us."
Yeah,
yeah.
That's all part of the fun, though.
We had a banky, like we were well within our side of the boundary last year, and a banky ends up. Like, I watch his stuff go across my bow, and I'm like, wow, that's bold. And it's too late to do anything about it. Like, I go down to, like, neutral, hoping that we're not going to... then it happens, and I'm like, ah. Reel it up. And I was like, hey, we're going to bring this back to you, I promise. Cut his stuff. And he thought we were taking his plug. He was pissed. I'm like, no, man. Like, I'm going to back with it. You. It's like, I can't stop.
Oh, man.
And so we hooked a fish after that. And so we slid back in there where you always see the guides in the corner.
Yeah.
And we're getting everything ready to go again. And I'm like, hey, man, I wasn't trying to, like, be an ass. Like, I told you I would bring it back. Maybe you didn't hear me. And he's like, no, we're good, man. I just wanted my plug back. He's like, that's my fault. And I was like, oh, I thought you were yelling at me like it was my fault. I was like,
oh, man. That's
like,
fun.
here, take your plug. Go kill fish.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was funny because later that day when I was done with my clients, there was 2 guys that had just, on a whim, driven down from Idaho, bought Washington licenses. They're casting a million times, didn't hook anything. And they're like, I get this phone call. And I'm like, I don't know that number. I was like, I'll let it go to voicemail. I got clients on the boat anyway. And then it calls again. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's important. Yeah. And I answer it. And they're like, hey, we've been watching you fish. And we came down here from Idaho. And like, can we jump on the boat? And I'm like, there was like 2 hours left before dark. And I was like, $100 a pop. Fuck it. Yeah. And they're like, okay.
Perfect.
And they both got their fish.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's killer. Tell us a little bit about your mascot here. How old is he?
So Cash, he'll be 3 on Veterans Day.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. He's a really cool dog.
We were actually gonna like get a hold of the guy because we're like, yeah, we want a dog, and he's like, okay, awesome. And they gave me a hell of a deal, and like pick of the litter even. And I kind of already had just off of photos. I knew what dog I wanted. Excuse me. And I was like, I was getting ready to call the guy at the last minute and be like, hey, I don't know if we're ready for a lab puppy again, because I'm picturing like rocket ship energy, piranha teeth destroying shit. It's like, I don't know if I'm ready to go from a trained service dog from Northwest Battle Buddies to a lab puppy.
Right. Yeah.
And he called me. Like, I'm literally like trying to find this guy's number to call him and be like, hey, I think we're going to wait on the dog. And he calls me. He's like, hey, the puppies were born on Veterans Day. And I'm like, okay, it's a sign. Fuck it. I want the dog.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's super cool, man.
For vets on the boat, especially combat vets, he's kind of like a therapy dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I got a picture of a Vietnam veteran that had never salmon fished. Kind of had kept to himself, like real recluse, doing Keith Hyde's Steelheaders fall Chinook trip out of Camas that he does every year.
Right.
Or Donnie Hyde's. And this guy's just standing there taking in the view. He also has one eye, which, spirit animal. Yeah. And Cash is standing up on the side of the boat, and he's just got his arm around the dog. And I'm like, this is like the best thing that's ever happened to that dude. And he caught his first salmon.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And he's a duck getter too, isn't he?
Sometimes better than others, but yes.
Yeah.
We didn't get out nearly as much as he wanted to this year, and he let me know about it.
Yeah. I took my little dog. This is her first duck season. I actually only went twice. But the first trip, was a banger, and I didn't even have my duck stamps yet, so I just went and I wanted to run the dog when my buddy shot,
Yeah.
and he killed 7 birds in like 10, maybe 15 minutes.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it was. Especially I'm trying to run the dog, and it was like just barely, it was legal light, but it was like just barely light enough to see.
Yeah.
And trying to send, a new hunting dog on birds. I mean, she went through a trainer, but she was, force fetched and stuff, but like, she never really had much formal retrieve training.
Yeah.
And so just trying to get her situated while birds are falling still, it's just she retrieved 4 of them and 2 decoys. So
That was the hardest thing when I tried to start training him, because he did not get formal training. I just took him to play fetch a lot, and then we introduced decoys. Then some buddies gave me frozen birds.
Yeah. I had her introduce the decoys too, which is kind of I really tried hard to not be pissy with her that first hunt, but it's like because I know it was her very first hunt ever, and I was trying to make it as fun as I could, but it was like 20-something degrees. She was cold and miserable. I mean, she's a fucking 50-pound lab, like she's half his size,
Like I wanted to get crappy with him on this postseason veteran / youth hunt the other day, but the fact that he only hunted 4, maybe 5 times during the season, I couldn't really be pissy with anybody but me for not taking him out more.
Yeah, absolutely. And she come back with a decoy, and it's like, okay, I don't want to scold her because I don't want her to give any kind of negative correlation with a retrieve, but I don't want to tell her good job because she got the wrong fucking thing, So it's like I just take the decoy and I hold it and I try to send her again, and she went and got the bird and sent her on the second bird. She went and got it, and then I threw the decoy out and she left it, and then she did the same thing. She went and picked up that decoy that I had just thrown out, and I'm like, well, fuck, that was my fault for trying to throw the
It's hard with a dog. You either have a family pet or you have a hunting dog.
Right.
And if you want a hunting dog and you push it too much, you run the risk of that dog blowing up on your kids.
Yeah, well, and it's tough because Abby she's such a pussy. She's very soft, and you come down on her at all and she folds.
Just shuts down.
Yeah, which that's kind of like the hardest thing is because we went and we had her force fetched and stuff, and one of the biggest things with force fetch is teaching. It's not even just like teaching a dog how to fetch, right? From my understanding, it's teaching a dog how to turn off pressure. So once a dog is force fetched and they understand how to turn off pressure, then you start doing pile work and stuff like that. But she had the force fetch down, but she never got the concept of turning off pressure. So I'd be trying to force her to a pile, and she would fold. She couldn't understand it. And so I tried taking her back and doing some collar work with her myself, and she kind of struggles with it. But biggest thing that's really kind of helped her is I still put the collar on her just so that she knows, like, hey, like, there's going to be some kind of pressure. All I need to do is give her a tone. I don't need to give her any kind of stimulation. I give her a tone, and she kind of understands, like, okay, like,
we call those hearing aids, by the way.
do you?
on the way out to the duck blind, I'm hoping that he's going to go too far, and I'm going to call him back, and he's not going to come instantly.
Yeah.
He's going to keep doing whatever he's doing. Because if I can correct him on the way out to the blind, I'm not going to have to. I can turn my remote off.
Right.
I do not have to touch that thing again all day long.
Right. And I've never trained a dog before. I watched a metric fuck ton of dog training videos, but I got really big into. There's a gentleman over in New York, Lone Duck Outfitters. He's got a really cool philosophy on e-collars. Basically, like, obviously, you never use an e-collar as like a correctional thing. So like they have direct pressure and indirect pressure, right? So you're going to give a stimulation while you're like, you give the command sit. You're going to give the stimulation until the butt hits the ground, pressure comes off,
Unless
right?
they do it when you tell them.
Right. And then, so say for example, the dog's running off, you're not going to fucking shock him to get him to stop. You're not going to say, come here, you're going to give pressure to your sides. You're going to give a recall. You're going to say here, give pressure until they're back. That kind of helps with the understanding of how to turn the pressure off. Yeah. But she just never got that.
If you take frozen birds, like leave the dog in the house where they can't even see you, drag them with fishing line all over the yard, and then hide it somewhere, what that's going to build is the dog has to rely on its nose.
Right.
and I just had a buddy tell me this when he saw my post about him not doing so good the other day. But you can get the dog used to, like, oh, I can't find it. They're gonna look back at you, and you can like just
Right.
give them like a very, very broad, like left or right, or back, and that'll kind of turn on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Abby, she's a really good dog. She just, I wish that I had more time to give to her. It's hard, you know, because I got a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and I'm working, 10 to 14 hours a day depending on the day. It's
Well, and where are you hunting?
Yeah.
If you're like me and you're hunting freaking Sheelapoo,
Yeah.
public area. Oh, we never like it could be windy everywhere in freaking Clark County, except Sheelapoo.
right.
I leave my house on Prune Hill and like my flagpole's about to break. It's ripping.
Yeah.
And then I get to Sheelapoo and I'm like, hell yeah, it's windy. As soon as I open my truck door, it's just like gone.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
no wind.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you got to get up at 2 because it's first come, first serve. And if you don't, there's already 10 cars parked at the gate. And you're just like, screw this.
Right.
Like after a while, it's like, man, we don't have weather. We don't have water. And I'm tired of fighting to get them lined.
Right, right. Yeah, we hunt on the Columbia quite a bit. But I don't want to say where, obviously, but all the hunting that we do is on the Columbia. So you still got to deal with some of the fighting for spots, but it's not nearly as bad as a Sauvie Island or a Sheelapoo or whatever.
Well, the beauty of Sauvie is, don't you put in? Isn't it picks just like Ridgefield?
So the east side of Sauvie is, the west side isn't. The west side's a chip draw.
That's what I want to do is start putting in.
Yeah, yeah.
Like just bounce back and forth between Ridgefield and Sauvie and just be done fighting.
Right. Yeah. I grew up hunting Sauvie Island. I won't do it anymore personally. It just I got so tired of it. I'd rather wake up at midnight, 1:00 in the morning, and launch my boat and go sit on the spot on the Columbia and not have to worry about skybusters being 100 yards away, 50 yards away.
It's so glorious when you have birds about to dip their toe in the water in your spread, and then the blind beside you starts blasting.
Yeah, no kidding. So
Adam's like, why the fuck are we talking about this? He's like,
Can you tell I was checked out?
Come out toward GPS.
yeah, well, cool, man. So before we
Talk more about springers.
yeah, before we take off here, why don't you tell everybody kind of where they can get a hold of you in terms of booking trips and stuff? What's the best way to contact you?
Facebook, Tenacity Outdoors has a Facebook page, or I think it's John Paul Kaiser Jr.
Okay.
Or John Kaiser Jr.
John Kaiser.
Facebook.
Yeah, John Kaiser Jr.
Personal page, or my phone, 360-213-4068, or tenacityoutdoors@gmail.com. We got a website coming, but I'm poor, so I'm waiting on a tax return to pay for that.
Yeah, perfect. Well, it's been really cool having you on, man. Our very first in studio guest. So you're kind of our guinea pig, and we've had a good time having you here.
So
yeah,
one of two things just happened. I either set the bar really high or really low. If it's low, I'm going to blame brain damage.
I'm going to blame Adam.
Yeah, it's my fault.
It's a lot easier to blame Adam. But, yeah.
Or blame my son for streaking through here.
Is he going to edit that out or not?
No, we're not editing that out.
What were you saying, Adam?
We're talking about my naked son walking through here too. So.
Yeah.
I just got canceled. Now I'm going to be a registered offender.
We almost forgot to
change the subject.
Yeah, we still got both of our giveaways going on. We're giving away this small fishing leaderboard. Go to episode 2 on our YouTube channel. You'll figure out how to learn that one, and Adam will tell you how to win the RPGs.
Go to our Facebook. Invite some friends. Invite 3 friends, right?
Yeah, you got to go to the pin post at the top of the page, and then comment 3 friends.
Comment, share the post, and then once we feel like we're ready, we're gonna give away some fish sauce RPGs.
Yeah,
so.
well, we're trying to give away 5 of them, but we need 5 people to fucking comment. But cool, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on.
This was really fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'd love to have you again sometime. Maybe once once we start catching fish.
Yeah.
So awesome. Alrighty. Well, you guys have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers. This episode is brought to you by the Fish Sauce RPG. Unleash the power of precision. Our RPG, rod positioning gadget, is the ultimate tool for adjusting Scotty or Fulby rod holders.
No more struggles or worn out tools, just smooth, easy adjustments. Elevate your fishing game and shop the RPG now.
www.fishsauce.com.